You're listening to the Leading Edge Radio Network. This morning, I am joined by Kevin, the voice of reason. And Kevin, you've got a special guest this morning. If you wouldn't mind, tell us who that is.
Yes, good morning. We have with us Larry Nichols, who's a former attorney and worked extensively in investigation of the Clinton White House during the Clinton years and the time thereafter. Larry, are you with us?
You bet. Thank you, Kevin. And by the way, for the record, Greg, Kevin, although it seems like it at times through the journey I've been on, I've acted as an attorney because I've had to represent myself. I'm not technically an attorney, although I did represent myself in several cases pro se.
Well,
You're the same kind of attorney I am, Larry.
Huh? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I didn't mean to step on you guys. I said, Larry, you're exactly the same kind of an attorney I am. I've had to practice federal law and in some other courts. Nothing criminal, mind you, but maybe against some criminal types here and there.
It's just to show that not everything on the Internet's correct, because that's what the Internet had listed about you.
Listen, Kevin, when it comes to the Internet and Larry Nichols, there's not much that's correct. I get blamed for that which I say, and then I get blamed for stuff I don't say, but people say I said it, so I'm used to it.
Well, you know what? We've got plenty of time here today, and I will let you say your piece, and you can start us at the beginning and just walk us through your journey.
You bet. Now, folks, I want to say first off, thanks to Leading Edge Radio Network for allowing me to come on and do something I have wanted to do for a long time. As we enter into the 2016 race, of which most probably Hillary Clinton's running, as we get into it, and as I do programs around the country, although I will be hubbed out of this network, thanks to these gentlemen, I want people that are 30-something years old, 40-something years old, 50-something years old. I want y'all to know my background and to be able to do it in a way to where you don't always have a program you hear me on. I have to go back and repeat who I am and why I'm here. So they were gracious enough at leadingedgeradionetwork.com to allow me to do this. So, folks, I want to start in the beginning. And for all of you that are not yet old enough to have been around 20 years ago when I was fighting Bill Clinton, I think it important that you know who Larry Nichols is. It started when I was working at an agency for the state of Arkansas called the Arkansas Development Finance Authority. Bill Clinton put me there. I had actually been working a project with, yes, the Contras. You got it, the Nicaraguan resistance, the Contras. Without getting into a lot of detail there, I was simply asked to help them, and I did. Because of the things that were going on there, it got a little rough, and I needed something to do that wasn't quite as demanding. So my family was kind of tired of me being shot at, and they suggested that I call my friend Bill Clinton and get a job with the state, and then everybody would be happy. Now, I did, and he put me at this agency that I'd never heard of, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, which is kind of weird because I thought I was so entrenched in state government that I would have known everything about any agency there. To let you know why, when I called him, he said yes, and he put me with this agency. It was because I've been with Bill Clinton, I was with Bill Clinton, from the first time he ran for governor, and every time up until the last time. You see, I worked and was a friend of one of the two kingmakers in Arkansas in that day, Jack Stevens and Whit Stevens, brothers that owned Arkansas, Louisiana Gas. They were the power makers. And Mr. Whit, like me, considered me a fair-haired boy, I guess, and he introduced me to the fact that there was a young man, his name's Bill Clinton, who was Attorney General, and he wanted me to help him, and they were going to make him governor. So I agreed to do it, and I did. I met Bill Clinton, and the first meeting I had with him, I made one astonishing, surprising bit of information. As I was trying to talk to him, he kept pinching the waitresses in the butt. He didn't listen to me very much. He was constantly interested in the women. And about every other word that he would tell me, I knew from my experience with the state, it was a lie. The first meeting I had with Mr. Whit Stevens after my initial meeting with Bill Clinton is I said, gosh, it's going to be tough. This guy's a pathological liar and a hopeless womanizer. He said, don't worry about it, get him elected. So I did. The most interesting thing of that day that would affect us today is the first time I met Hillary Clinton. Now, in that day, she let me know real fast. She was not Hillary Clinton. She was Hillary Rodham. Now, remember, folks, this is mid-'70s in Deep South, Arkansas. And here comes the future First Lady, but she wouldn't take her husband's name. That was a bit of a challenge, so I thought, until I actually met her face-to-face. There was a big luncheon scheduled, fundraiser for Bill Clinton, running for governor, first time. And it was for all these East Arkansas rich farmers. Here we go. We have the luncheon, big table set up for hors d'oeuvres. No Hillary. I started panicking. Everybody started panicking. Hillary wasn't there, and this was a meet and greet, Bill and Hillary, except that Hillary wasn't there. Finally, she showed up. Now, folks, I'll never forget this image, and I want you to remember it, because this is the true Hillary. She came in. She had dirty, filthy hair. She did not like bathing. She had not washed her hair. She had hairy legs, hairy arms, and she was wearing a muumuu with flip-flops. And I don't mind telling you, there was a smell. Now, many people have told me during the course of my battle against Bill 20 years ago, people said, well, that was a demonic smell. No, she just didn't bathe. But around her neck, she wore an ID badge, which I thought was kind of odd. It looked like a press pass. It was on a chain like we had our dog tags on in the military. When I got up close enough to look, it wasn't a press ID. What that badge said was that she was a proud member of the United States Communist Party. Now, folks, here again, go back to that day, Deep South, in the mid-'70s. That wasn't the thing we wanted her wearing, but she wore it. She also made it clear to the whole room she was Hillary Rodham, not Hillary Clinton, and that if he got elected, she wasn't taking his name. She was going to be Hillary Rodham. That night proceeded to go downhill. My time with Hillary went downhill from that day forward. She never liked me, although Bill was a very pliable, workable guy. Hillary was not. So I go to work for Bill, get him elected. At the same time, I'm involved with other projects, one being the Contra, Nicaraguan resistance. When I finally took the job, I gave you that background to understand why when I said, Bill, I need a cush job, he said, I got the perfect place for you. And it was a place called the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, as I said earlier. I go there, and I'm told that that agency, we will call it ADFA, ADFA was there to make low-interest bond loans for schools, churches, charitable organizations, libraries, etc. But when I'm there for about 2 weeks, I noticed they don't ever make loans to any of that. The only people that were getting loans were companies that were just regular companies. Now, why was that significant? Because we had an industrial development commission, one that Sheffield Nelson ran. And so if you were a typical business in Arkansas and you wanted a low-interest bond loan, you would go to your Arkansas Development Commission, just like you would in your states. But we had this other agency. Now, ADFA, as it turned out, was a quasi-state agency. What does that mean? It means when it needed it, it was a state agency. It had all the protection and all the funding of a state agency. When it needed it, it could also be a private corporation. And I'm wondering, what's that about? Well, it didn't take me long until I figured it out, or until I was shown what that was about. The people that got those loans were actually friends of Bill. It wasn't churches, it wasn't charitables, it wasn't schools, it was friends of Bill. And what these corporations had to do when they came in to borrow money, they would have to make a commitment. Let's say you wanted to borrow folks $1 million. You would need to borrow $1,050,000. And then $50,000 of that, once you got your money, you would put into Clinton's future campaign fund. Seemed weird, but it was just the way things were done in Arkansas, and I must tell you, didn't bother me. That's the way it went. That's the way it went. Arkansas was a little bit local state, small state. Things like that were done all the time. Which leads me to the next point I must say to all of you. And Greg, Kevin, I know, Greg, you've heard me say it, but I want to say it to this audience. Because of what I did for Bill Clinton in those days, and my entire time with him, I have to admit to you, every one of you, that I'm probably the sorriest individual you ever met in your life. I lied, I cheated, I did everything I had to do to get that man elected, keep him elected, to cover up scandal after scandal. So, folks, I don't want you to be deceived. I'm not a good man. I'm not here to be a good man. I'm not trying to start a church. I'm not trying to be elected pope. I'm here to tell you the truth about what I was involved with, who I was. I'm trying not to be that today, but that's who I was then. And I think it only fair to declare it. And say also that the media, as it was against Bill, when if she formally announces, you can expect the media to hit me with everything they got. And I'll be accused of everything under the sun, and the media will do everything they can to tell people that I'm a sorry person. So the good news is I've got that out of the way early. There's not much that media is going to accuse me of that I haven't done or worse. So, with that said, I go to work at ADFA. Adolfo Calero, who was the head of the Contras in that day, the big, tall, white-headed man you saw with Ronald Reagan, and big thing was they were in the middle of all the Iran-Contra hearings. And, of course, Oliver North, Poindexter, McFarland, those guys were getting hit real hard, looking real bad. But it was always about Iran guns, Contras, drugs for money, drugs for guns, etc. Well, Adolfo asked me, what is this, Larry? Because they weren't getting any money. And I'll sum it up this way as quick as I can. If the Contras had drug money in exchange for whatever the racket was supposed to be, they wouldn't have been in this country begging for every penny they could get so they could wage their war against Daniel Ortega and his brother Humberto.
Absolutely.
No, they didn't have money.
We're coming up on our first break, and of course I always hate to interrupt, but my name is Greg Martin, and I'm joined by Kevin, the voice of reason. You're listening to Larry Nichols on the Leading Edge Radio Network, home of the Larry Nichols program. We're going to pause just for a few moments, and we'll be right back.
All right, and we're back with Larry Nichols. This is Kevin, the voice of reason, on the Leading Edge Radio Network. And we had to take a quick break there. And Larry, you were talking about the Contras and them coming to the States to beg for money. The time now is 1980s, right?
Yes, it was in the mid-'80s. Kevin, what had happened, and once again, folks, I want to thank LeadingEdgeRadio.com for letting me be here today and tell this long, drawn-out story, but we're going to get it out of the way so all of you will know who I am in the days coming up. So Adolfo comes to me and says, what's going on with this? He didn't know. The Contras was a bad thing. I mean, North and all of them were just getting roasted every day. I start looking. Well, much to my chagrin, the very agency I was working at, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, was connected with a man named Dan Laster, who was one of Clinton's best friends, that for some time, all of us around Bill knew that he would go, the state police, Larry Patterson, Roger Perry, and all of his security guards would know that they'd take him to Laster's office. And in Laster's office, there was always on his desk this big bowl of what looked like sugar. Well, it wasn't sugar. And Bill would go in and do cocaine with Dan, I guess, or whatever all they did. So I'm here. Here's Laster. And that's weird because he is actually, folks, with his bonding company, his bond company, he was actually buying and selling the bonds for the issues that ADFA did. Well, that looked a little kinky, but then that's when I found out, in response to Adolfo Calero, that's when I found out about a place, believe it or not, guys, right here in Arkansas, right at the agency I was working with, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, through Dan Laster and some other Bill's other friends and his brother, they were laundering $100 million a month in cocaine money coming in from Central America through one guy, was named Barry Seal, to mention one of them. Most all the rest of the stuff, anybody can go back and look at Iran Contra, and you see Southern Air, etc. Well, it was all being laundered right here.
Wow.
When I found that out, I went to Bill. And, folks, I tell you all this history so you understand why I'm here today. I went to Bill. Now, we had just found out my father had lung cancer, and he was dying. He had 18 months to live. I went to Bill, and I said, Bill, went to the Capitol, went in his office. I said, Bill, now look, you got me wrong. I'm one of the guys, but I ain't that big of one of the guys, because truly I knew that one of the responsibilities we all had around Bill Clinton was, if ever you got caught doing anything, you fell on your bayonet for him. He was always protected and shielded by his men, by the people around him. I went to Bill, and I said, Bill, we got a problem. Number one, my dad is dying of lung cancer. He said he was sorry. And I said, he's got 18 months to live. And he said, he's real sorry about that. And I said, now, the other problem we got is I found out that agency is laundering drug money from Central America. And I said, Bill, now his daughter and my daughter were the same age, played together and stuff. And I said, Bill, if my daughter ever got hooked on cocaine, I could not live with myself knowing that I helped facilitate it coming into this state. I just can't. I just couldn't. Bill, at the time, I didn't know for sure if he knew, but when I told him, looking at his face, I had learned to read Bill Clinton, and looking at his face, I wouldn't tell him something he didn't know, although he said he knew nothing of it. I told him he had 2 weeks to straighten it up and bring it out, or I would. He said, whatever you do, don't panic. I'll get it all taken care of. I said, that's fine. You got 2 weeks. I no sooner leave his office, and I get in the car, and on the radio, I mean, that quick, guys, on the radio, here is this thing where some guy that worked for the state was high up in the Contras. And Bill Clinton literally was called during that interview, and he said, yeah, some guy, I don't know who it was, but he's smiling and dialing the Contras on state time and state money. Well, folks, when he did that, the war was on. And to my loss, my dad died thinking all this stuff that was said about me. I guess he may have thought it was true. Now, he knew me well enough, I hope, that he died knowing I wasn't guilty of any of it. But when that came out and all that started, remember, the Contras was bad. So here, Arkansas, and they had little cartoons in the papers in Arkansas of, you know, Arkansas's own little Ollie North. They started roasting me. They accused me of everything under the sun. And one day there would be an article in the paper saying I robbed banks on weekends. 6-8 weeks later, of course, there'd be a little 1-inch retraction, wrong Larry Nichols, but people read the front page. not to retraction 6-8 weeks later. And they knew what I know and knew because we had done this to others. This is one of the things that I'm guilty of. That's why I accepted the Clinton roast the way I did. I had done it to anybody else that dared to come out against him when I was with him. And it got bad, and it got bad, and it got worse. We lost our home. Nobody in the state would hire me. It was tough, folks. My dad dying. You just can't imagine. And I thought truly things had gotten about as bad as it could possibly get. We moved into a little house that we rented. Everything stacked up from our big house. And finally, it was January the 16th, 1989, that I sat in my recliner amidst all these boxes, had a pistol in my hand, and I reached down and touched the floor, and I said, well, God, I'm as low as it can go. I can't get any lower. And I don't know, Kevin, Greg, I don't know to this day if I was going to shoot myself in the mouth. I don't know. But I certainly was to that point mentally. I went to sleep. Next morning I woke up, and I knew what to do. Now, God didn't burn no bush. I even asked God to tell me what to do. Scroll it across the TV screen. Help me. He didn't scroll it across the TV screen. But I woke up the next day, and I knew the way to beat Bill Clinton was tell the truth. But the bad news was, knowing the way they roasted people, knowing the way they controlled the media in Arkansas, which is what it was at that time, just Arkansas, I knew that they controlled the media. So if I was going to tell the truth about him, I had to tell the truth about me. I filed a lawsuit. First time, people in the know in Arkansas knew about Bill Clinton being a womanizer. I knew from a marketing perspective that sex sells. So I knew that that's where I was going to strike. So I named 7 women in the lawsuit, one of which was Jennifer Flowers, by the way. The media came, Rush got the lawsuit. Not a word printed, not a word. But I also knew that they would spin me around in court. So what did I do? I filed a parallel case in federal court, knowing that one day Bill Clinton was going to run for president. And I thought when he ran for president, surely the Stevens and this big conglomerate would not control the national media. So when he ran for president, all of this could come out and I would have some protection. Well, all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me, a man comes up to me. His name's Pat Patriciano. He was with Jeremiah Films. And Bill Clinton was announcing, I'm sort of speeding things up. He was announcing he was running for president. He ran for president. He won in spite of all the stuff I had, but nobody would print it. Much to my surprise, Stevens and them were powerful nationwide. They already had access to the national media. They were spiking everything. Clinton gets elected. I'm just about as depressed as man can be, and a man named Pat Patriciano comes. He was with a company called Jeremiah Films. They were the largest producer and distributor of Christian films in the country in that day. And he thought there was more to our story, so he said, here's what you do. We're going to do a video. I said, all I want is just a video with me telling it my way. So I sat down in front of a camera, and actually the day my dad died, 4 hours earlier, Dad died in my arms. 4 hours later, I'm at a hotel in Conway, and I'm making the first video known as the Circle of Power. It was just me sitting in a chair telling my story. Now, by that time, folks, you'd already heard of me, some of you, because nobody would touch me in the media, so I used a guy named Stephen Edwards with Star Magazine. And Star Magazine said they would do a story, but they wanted one of the women to come forward that I'd named in the lawsuit. I told them I would do that. I'd get them one of the women, but they had to make me a deal, which they lived up to. The first story will be about me, telling who I am and what I was involved in. And they did. And then I said they will come out with the media around here, certainly the Associated Press, and they'll say that they've investigated all these women, there was nothing to it, and when they did that, we would two-punch them with a woman that would come out. I actually made the deal with Jennifer. She'll tell you. I made the deal with Jennifer Flowers. They gave her, I think it was $120,000 for her story. They kept her under wraps. Lo and behold, out comes my story in Star Magazine, right on schedule. That Thursday, they come out saying it was all bunk. And then the next day, we break with Jennifer Flowers. That's how you heard about Jennifer Flowers. It came from me in the lawsuit that I had filed. So all of this stuff's out there. I mean, I'm out there with Jennifer Flowers. The media just totally ignores it. So Matriciano said, let's do a video, which is what they did. We did it, and I gave up. I quit. That's all I said I would do, and it was over. The Contra thing was bad. Everything looked bad. I looked like some kind of traitor to America. One Sunday morning, I woke up, the phone ringing, and a man named Bob Leslie called me. He said, man, and by the way, Bob Leslie was the head of that day of the Arkansas Republican Party, which consisted of him and probably one or two other people. In Arkansas on that day, there wasn't anything known as a Republican Party. He called me up and he said, man, you're getting them. I said, what are you talking about, Bob? He said, you're tagging them. I said, what do you mean I'm tagging? He said, well, man, I just saw you on Falwell, that interview you did with Jerry Falwell. And you could hit me in the face with a hot dog. I hadn't done any interview with Jerry Falwell. Well, come to find out, Pat Matriciano had negotiated a deal with Jerry Falwell and his ministry to distribute the Circle of Power video. And every Sunday morning, it was out there. Well, because of that, they had me starting to do talk radio, which didn't exist back then. In that day, as you'll remember, Greg, Kevin, in that day, AM radio stations were worth nothing. I'd do a show, be talking for a little bit. Somebody called in and said they had a bicycle to sell for $25. It was all swap shops. Well, that's what I did. And then from that, folks, grew what you know today is talk radio. And from that point
amazing,
on,
Larry. That is absolutely amazing. We're coming up on a break here in about a minute. Kevin, anything that you'd like to ask Larry before we go to break? As I said, we've got about a minute before a hard break.
I'll take you up on the backside of it. So you're there at the beginning of talk radio. This is pushing what 87, 88 by now?
No, this would have been 93, 94.
Okay, 93, 94.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been jumping time for y'all, but I'm trying to take you back and get you as quick as I can to present.
This is perfect. This is what we need. I'm Greg Martin, joined by Kevin, the voice of reason, and you are listening to Larry Nichols in a live and uncensored version. And Larry is now found a radio home, and that home is leadingedgeradionetwork.com. We'll be back right after this break.
Okay. And we're back. This is Kevin, the voice of reason, and I'm on with Greg Martin and Larry Nichols. Larry, I did get the chance to meet Bill years ago, and one thing I remember is when there wasn't a whole lot of people around, it was just, him in a closed setting. It was kind of like staring into a set of headlights. You weren't quite sure what was going on there. Did you kind of have that same vibe?
Well, Bill's different. Bill's an inch deep, a mile wide. I mean, he's probably a good old boy, and when you sit and talk to him, you'll like him. I mean, he's funny, he's cordial, but you're not going to get close to him. We ran what was called a tight loop, and Bill had learned that the way we protected him was by keeping his circle of actual friends, the people that handled him, the people that dealt with all the issues. You keep that real tight. And every time you let somebody else in, something gets out, and now you got something you got to deal with. So he seemed a little distant when especially you see him on stage or on TV, and he's just so personable and friendly, you just can't believe. Well, that's what it was. He knew better. He knows better.
Right. It seemed more like it was kind of like he was a reflection of whoever happened to be in the room. If there were sports people around, he was all about sports. If there was finance people around, he was all about,
That's exactly Bill Clinton. We trained him to mirror the audience. So that's why we could be speaking in front of a gathering of church folks, and he'd be quoting scripture. We'd be in a room full of gamblers, and he'd be the good old boy. You know what I mean? That Bill would mirror the audience. Bill would be. That's the purpose of being an inch deep, a mile wide. He'd be whatever he needed to be at that moment in time to please the audience and look like he was one of you, one of them. And he wasn't.
Okay,
not then, not now.
So I'm not the only one that felt like, you know, when he was, I always wondered if the guy was alone, if there's anything really there.
No.
Bill liked the perks. No audience around.
Yeah, Bill liked the perk of the job. When there was no audience around, Bill Clinton was chasing women. Don't even doubt it. I mean, come that time. Well, let me get back to where I was. And, folks, you're listening. I know maybe you're getting a little bit confused as to why am I talking about all this instead of talking about Hillary. We see all of this just so that you know why I'm able to talk about Hillary. Star came out with their article. Then Jennifer came out. And then, because of Falwell and the sales of all these videos that were out there, which I didn't get any, by the way, I wouldn't take money because I knew if I took money, much to my chagrin, if I took money, they'd say I did it just for the money. Now, as it turned out, I should have taken the money because they blame me anyway for taking the money. I heard of accounts I had in the Cayman and stuff like that, and finally the media would say, well, what about this account in the Cayman Islands? I'd say, well, tell me where it is so I can go get the money. But it kept growing. And this thing, this talk radio thing, just kept growing. And what we were actually doing was coming in under their radar. They had blocked me from the mainstream media. No way any of this stuff was getting out to anybody. Any of you in the country, unless you listened to talk radio, you knew none of this. Well, then a lady came to me. Her name was Paula Jones. Told me about what happened with her. And, folks, for those of you that weren't there at the time, Paula Jones, they called her trailer trash. They called her all sorts of terrible names. The lady was a nice young lady. She worked for the state. She was young, very young at that time. She worked for the state. She was at a convention at the Excelsior Hotel. Bill Clinton saw her. He sent Danny Ferguson, one of his state police bodyguards, who, by the way, told me the story himself. He goes down, tells her the governor wants to see her. What was she to do? She goes upstairs. She goes in the room. She noticed Danny Ferguson pulled the door sort of shut, but he left it open a little bit. She turned around. Bill told her to sit down, asked her how she liked her job. She sat down on the couch or sofa or whatever. And she looked up, and next thing she did, she turned around and he had dropped his trowel and had exposed himself to her and wanted her to have oral sex with him. Well, it scared her. She got up. She ran out. He didn't care. Then it was up to Ferguson and all of the people to make sure that she never opened her mouth. So they threatened her, told her she could lose her job. It was horrible. Well, when that lady came to me and told me the story, Pat said, can we put it on video? She asked me, Larry, should I come forward and tell? So y'all know where I stood on that. I said, no. Honey, you come forward, and they're going to just roast you. They're going to put you, you're not going to believe the terrible things nationally that are going to be said about you. We need you to come forward so people know who you are. But I can't tell you in good faith because you just had a brand new baby, and I don't want to see your lives ruin, her and Steve, her husband, and the baby. To her credit, she said, no, I will tell the truth. She told the truth, and they sought out to destroy her. Now, it was during that time, guys, that Pat made another production called the Clinton Chronicles. Now, folks, this is one that most of you see on the Internet. And that's where they put more production into it. They literally went out and shot extra footage. And it wasn't just me. It was all the people, and they had everybody involved, and it became a pretty slick production. Now, what most people don't realize, they sold somewhere around 60 million of those things. Falwell sold another 40 million. I mean, it was huge. It was the biggest, still is, the largest selling video of all time. It was about Bill Clinton. But even with that out there, even with that, The mainstream media wouldn't touch any of it with a 10-foot pole. Finally, a reporter from the Sunday Telegraph, London Sunday Telegraph, named Ambrose Evans Pritchard, came to me and wanted to know what all this was about. And I told him, and he started following. And the people, believe it or not, folks, in London, people in Australia, they knew all about me. They knew all about the Clintons and what had gone on in Arkansas. By the way, I broke all the scandals. It got to be so bad it was a scandal a week. It was Whitewater. It was Paula Jones, Sally Perdue. It was Red Bone. What was Red Bone? Red Bone was an investment deal Hillary was in where she put $1,000 in cattle futures. Some of you remember it maybe. She made $1 million off cattle futures when she put $1,000 in. How'd she do that? Well, this Red Bone guy up in Fayetteville, when he took her $1,000, he would invest it, and then he took other people and invested their money. Well, if theirs won, their stock won, and hers didn't, he allocated it and made it look like she bought their stock and they bought the loser. That's how she did it. I broke that. I broke the thing about the pharmaceutical business. People don't even know it. The time when Oklahoma bombing came in, it kind of overshadowed it. That's why most people didn't hear about it. But Bill Clinton had all of their wealth put in this blind trust, which as most presidents or all presidents do. Well, they were roasting insurance companies. They were fixing to tackle pharmaceutical companies. They were going to tackle the prices of drugs. They were going to destroy it. Come to find out, Hillary had ordered Steve Smith to buy short on pharmaceutical stocks. Of course, the price dropped. They made a killing. Well, then, when Oklahoma City bombing happened, guess what? They announced they weren't going to go after the pharmaceutical companies, and guess what? The stock shot up. Well, guess what? Through their blind trust, they had bought long and made a fortune there. So it's funny when Hillary says at the end of their term as president, they were flat broke. I don't think so, but if they were, it was because of all the scandals that I had been a part of bringing out that got out there and caused lawsuits, and they had to spend money to defend it. So everything's going on. Still nobody in the mainstream media would touch it. Nobody. And all of a sudden, I get a call, and I find out about a lady named Linda Tripp. Linda Tripp allowed me to find out about another lady named Monica Lewinsky. Now remember, folks, I had brought out 38 scandals against Bill Clinton when he was president. So when you're looking back and thinking Bill Clinton historically now looks so great, you better go back and check. He wasn't so great. 38 scandals. Then here comes Lewinsky. I had Mike Isikoff, who was with the Washington Post, but because he wrote good about me one time, they fired him. He ended up not being able to get a job, so he went back to work for Newsweek, which owned the Washington Post, same people. I told him about it. He said, that's the story of the century. He promised, he swore they would run it. They had plenty of lines, their lineage in the magazine. It'd be perfect where a newspaper couldn't touch it. So I, believing he would, I'd gotten to know him. He did the story on Monica Lewinsky. Bad news was, when it came time to release it, he called me, and Newsweek refused to run it. The story, can you believe it? The story of a century, Monica Lewinsky. I immediately called a guy I had met out in California doing the George Putnam radio show. His name was Matt Drudge. And I actually knew how to hook up to Isikoff's story, gave it to Drudge. Drudge broke it, and folks, that's how you now have Matt Drudge, the Drudge Report. That story made his career. So you see, I was in the middle of all this stuff, more than I can go into even in this background program, telling you about all this stuff. There's just too much. I just want you to know that the version of history that stands today about Bill and Hillary when he was president and when he was governor is no more true than I'm Santa Claus. And by the way, if you doubt me actually being there, if you doubt that I was actually involved in all that stuff, it's hard to find. like I told you, mainstream media wouldn't touch it. Finally, when the Lewinsky story came, they had no choice. Well, they had to cover it. They had to. It was just too big. Bill Clinton wrote about me. Bill Clinton wrote about me in his memoirs. Go look. I'm there.
Well, we are once again up against the break. It's amazing. You know, Larry, this is one of those programs that it's historical, number one. But it is truly what you are discussing will keep this audience here for a long, long time, not only just hearing it live, hearing it on the archives, playing it over and over again on YouTube, but they'll keep coming back to it. I'm Greg Martin, and you're listening to Kevin, the Voice of Reason, who has Larry Nichols, and Larry's new radio home is Leading Edge Radio Network. We'll be back right after this break.
All right, cool. And we're back. This is Kevin, the Voice of Reason, and I'm here with our own Greg Martin, and our special guest today, and soon to have his own show, is Larry Nichols. And he's filling us in on the background of both himself and the Clintons. So bring us up to speed, Larry. We're now in the mid-'90s, right?
Right. Well, we're actually pulling in now towards the end of the 90s. We're getting towards the end of Clinton's reign. Monica Lewinsky. She was the story. And folks, and by the way, Greg, Kevin, thank you. And I want to say to the audience, I certainly want to thank the leadingedgeradionetwork.com for allowing me to come and tell this long drawn out story. But you need to know it so you know who I am, why I'm here, and what's coming with the bout between me and Hillary. So anyway, out comes Lewinsky. Everything blows. And at that point, the media had to cover it. Now, guys, you notice, like Kevin, I'm jumping time, and 1 minute we're in the early 90s, and then we're in the mid-90s, now we're in the late 90s. It all passed, but I assure you it wasn't slow. I mean, it wasn't fast, it was slow. My family was destroyed. I was destroyed. It was horrible. Horrible. People following us. People threatening us. People beating me up. I mean, it got tough. And there were a million stories in between these and the ones I've told. But I'm trying not to take it too far into the depths of all that, because the real issue of me being here is Hillary. Now, guys, during this time, Hillary was there the whole time. Hillary knew all about it. When the stuff came out about Lewinsky, it was Hillary that had her transferred before they all leaked out. She thought she had it under wraps. She didn't know I had the dress. She didn't know that I was working with Paula Jones' attorneys. And I knew if we could ever get her under oath, he would lie, or get Bill under oath, he'd lie, which he did. All of this cloak and dagger stuff was going on that nobody knew about. But beware, it was Hillary covering all of this. She ran everything. Especially when Lewinsky came out, Bill went into the shock because it was actually everywhere. It was in the media. Hillary ran things. So he's always run things. Now, Bill Clinton gets defeated, or he leaves office finally. And I think my job's over. In comes George Bush, George W. I warned everybody I was getting off the radio. I'd had my time in hell. But you better be careful. I didn't know that much about George W., and everybody breathed a sigh of relief and said, oh, we're safe now. Well, we weren't. When George Bush came 9/11, shouldn't have been a surprise. With 9/11 came two wars, one of which I guess was justified to some degree. Afghanistan, we should have gone into Afghanistan. We should have blown them up. But then we should have left. We should have gone and made a commitment to stay forever. And then George Bush got us in a war in Iraq, which we should have never gotten into because they had nothing to do with 9/11. I'll leave it to all of y'all as to whether that was about oil. I'll leave it to y'all to believe whatever you want to believe, because that's not me. I just know this, thanks to the war that Bush got us into in Iraq and Afghan wars, they got us into Iraq and Afghanistan for whatever the reason. We took people over in the Middle East that were perfectly content, Shia and Sunni, to kill each other. all of a sudden we put us on the map with Israel, and all they want to do is kill us. And they're still trying to kill us to this day. But that goes on. Then there's another election, and then here comes Hillary. And I started having to come out again because I knew from day one, Hillary Clinton, from the day she was a child, was wanting to be the first woman president of the United States. And folks, for all you can say about Bill and Hillary, bad, you got to say that those are two people that from childhood knew what they wanted to do and did whatever they had to do to get in a position to do it. It was her turn to run for president. She was running. Now, we had rules when I was with Clinton. We had a playbook. Any of you that want to get it, you need to go out. There's a book that I wrote in like 98, 99. It's called The Genie's Out of the Bottle. And in that book, I describe all the plays we used to use to keep Clinton in power, to get him elected and keep him there. Now, those plays that we used are what's used in Washington by all of them. Unfortunately, it's like I helped invent a system that's destroying us today. But the good news is I know. The good news is I know what they're going to do. I know what she's going to do. I know how she's going to do it before she does it. But here comes Hillary. Now, one of the rules we had, which got me in trouble on the radio, for those of you that listened to some guy named Santelli, a radio show, Pete Santelli, and it wasn't his fault, it was mine. I'd had surgery, and I'd just gotten home. They'd put me to sleep at Versed or something like that. And I come on, and I was trying to tell the story about Kill 'Em When They're Young. Kill 'Em When They're Young was what we used to call the play that we would use when somebody was going to cause us trouble, when somebody was going to run against Bill. We got out early and destroyed them. Now, we killed them, not dead, bang, bang, but we destroyed their reputation. And we had people that their families wouldn't even use their name anymore. I mean, that's how bad. We'd make them lose their companies, make them lose their family. You know, and then I learned there was something worse than being killed, bang, bang, you're dead. You know, you're still breathing, but trust me, you're dead when you get roasted that away. Well, I was telling about that, but the way I ended up telling it was I killed all these people and I did this, that, and the other. Folks, for that, I'm sorry. It was not Pete Santilli's fault, but I would have admitted to being pumpkinhead if they'd have asked. And that's why I tell you, when this thing moves on, I'm not going to tell you I won't make mistakes. That was one that's all over the internet that I wished I hadn't have made, but I made it. Don't blame me, blame me. So now, Hillary's running, but she doesn't go out and convince this young guy named Barack Obama that he better get the hell out of the race. And one day it would be his turn, just not now. And if he didn't get out of the race, they were going to destroy him. They didn't do that. She let him get in. One of the big things that always kept Clinton elected and will elect her again is what we call the broken coalition. The blacks, they didn't have enough votes on their own to elect anybody. The homosexuals didn't have enough votes on their own to elect anybody. The hippies and yippies, they didn't have enough votes. And so what you do is you take all these little factions, these groups, and you put them together. It's called the broken coalition. Now you've got enough votes to win. By the way, I mentioned homosexuals. I think it needs to be said, and I think it needs to be said in Bill Clinton's words, not mine. Bill Clinton told me time and time again, when I would warn Bill about going out and running around chasing women, and I would say, what about Hillary? Doesn't she care? He'd say, well, they've got an open relationship. She doesn't care. She does who she wants to, and he does who he wants to, which will come into play here in a minute. But he would always say, and by the way, she gets more women than I do. So let's make it clear. Hillary is AC/DC. I said it, I've said it on the air all over this nation. So now, when they were elected the first time, if any of you recall, now you're going to know why the homosexual parade that was marching, they had a big sign that said, finally, we have a first lady we can blank. And they didn't use the word blank. If you don't believe me that Bill told me, I would remind you to go to Jennifer Flower's book. He would tell her the same thing. Yes, sir. Greg, were you saying something? I'm sorry.
I think Kevin might have had an observation. Kevin, hold that observation for a second, if if you don't mind. While we're still in the 90s here discussing this, one of the new shows that we actually have coming out alongside yours, which is totally unrelated. It's just amazing the timing of this. But it was November 29th, 1993, that Kathleen Willey went on 60 Minutes and accused President Clinton of sexual assault. And Kathleen is going to be doing a show. Obviously, your show will be on the network prior to Kathleen's, but had a long conversation with her yesterday right after you and I hung up. And it's going to be, the gloves are coming off. Granted, 1993 may have been a long time ago, but as they say, a leopard never changes his or her spots. Kevin, I think you had an observation.
Wow. That's the gist of my observation. I mean, this is amazing stuff. And I thought I was aware of things in the 90s because I was at a high-tech school that had internet back then, and that was before most everybody else had internet. But, wow.
Well, Kevin, it was amazing if you'd have been me, how all of these everyday reporters from the mainstream, from 60 Minutes, from Nightline, all these people came to me every day. They were getting stories left and right, every week, new stories. And you know what? They wouldn't put any of it out. Nobody knew it. People didn't know it. So, yeah, that's the purpose of this program. There is a history around the Clintons, even when they were president and first lady, that people don't know about. And especially the 30, 40, and 50s crowd, because all they've got is the version of history as being told by the mainstream media and the Clintons. And that's why I was saying, put into a break, one of the things you need to know, if you doubt my credibility, hey, believe Bill. Bill put me in his memoirs. He didn't write good about me, but that was good.
Well, I mean, I remember in '93 being in college, having access to the internet and to Usenet, and I'd see articles on things like this, but they were buried in Usenet news groups. Before we had web pages, there were text-only articles about this kind of thing, and it referred to Bill and Hillary as the hillbilly mafia, and talked about Whitewater and some of the things going on in Arkansas, and it was amazing stuff, and then it would be gone the next day. You'd read it, and it'd be there for a couple of days, and then it was gone.
Yeah, Larry, I remember every time that happened.
Absolutely, and Larry, I remember back in 1993 when I first had my exposure to the Clinton Chronicles. I had a friend of mine. I don't mind saying his name. He's deceased now. He's a former naval commander. First name Ben. I won't give the last name out of respect to the family, but he sat me down. He says, "Greg, I've got something I want to show you." And man, I was absolutely amazed. So that's the first time I heard about Larry Nichols. We're about 2 minutes away from a break. Kevin, you want to slip in a couple other questions before we go to break and have Larry pick up?
So, Larry, you said that you got along fine with Bill and that you guys were able to talk and so forth. But even in the early years, Hillary was just hostile and hard to get along with?
Yeah, Hillary has several problems that I'd like to go into the next segment. I think we should get to it. But Hillary hated me. We used to have meetings, staff meetings, and I'd be in there, and she'd say something, and I'd say, what's the latest dyke you've been around, Butch? And she'd get up and storm out. Bill used to joke and say, how do you do that? I wish you'd teach me how to get her to leave so quick. So, yeah, I mean,
wow.
Hillary and I didn't get along real well. And so you can imagine the blood runs deep between she and I, especially when I broke the story that was given me by Bill Clinton, by the way, that Chelsea was not Bill's daughter. Chelsea is the daughter of Webb Hubbell. And I went public with that all over the country. Now, by the way, when I went public with that story, the White House issued a memo that they were never to allow pictures to be made with Chelsea, Bill, and Hillary with Webb Hubbell on the stage. So there's nothing I've said here, guys, that I didn't say then. I'm sorry?
That is amazing, Larry, and notwithstanding, we can talk about that more. We are up against a hard break. You are listening to Greg Martin here with Kevin, the voice of reason. We're both absolutely floored about what we're hearing. Larry Nichols, this new home of Larry Nichols, we are so pleased to have you, Larry, and you are going to educate the public. We'll be back right after this.
And this is Kevin, the voice of reason, on the Leading Edge Radio Network. And I'm here with our own director, Greg Martin, and we have a very special guest today, getting ready for his new show on the Leading Edge Radio Network. That is Larry Nichols. Take it away, Larry.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Greg. And once again, folks, thank you to the Leading Edge Radio Network. Now, guys, I know this is, if you watch the entire series, I know it's lengthy. But it's to give you some background of who I am. And believe me, I've left out 10 times more than I have told. But where we are now is we're starting to get into Hillary. Hillary was behind making sure everything was taken care of, everything was covered up. Now, I used to ask Bill, how on earth did you end up with Hillary? And he would tell me, Bill Clinton himself would tell me it was a marriage of convenience because she, through her dad from Chicago, had big connections that could help him. It wasn't until later that I found out, now folks, I hope you're sitting down, but Hillary's dad, Hugh Rodham, was in partners with a guy named Dan Rostenkowski, who was the head of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. And they actually ran a savings loan, but they actually did something else. They took over. They were the leaders of the old Capone mob when Capone left. And they had power. And Bill needed that power because one day he was going to run for president. And they had worked it out in college that he would run for president, and then when he got through, she'd get her turn. I mean, and to all of us that knew him back in Arkansas in the early days, you got to be kidding me, a womanizer and all this stuff. Gary Hart got caught with a woman, and he got his presidential hopes knocked out. Well, here comes Bill and Hillary. Pathological liar, womanizer Bill. And it didn't end when he got to be president. As Kathleen, Willie, and others, it just kept going and going and going. And like you said, leopard doesn't change spots. And then you had Hillary. Hillary was mean. Hillary ran things. Hillary's still mean. She still runs things. Now, to get you up to date, Hillary probably, when she runs for president this time, will have the best resume of anybody ever in the history of this nation. She had spent time as First Lady of Governor in Arkansas. She was First Lady of the President of the United States, and everybody knew she pretty well ran things. Then she became the junior senator in the state of New York, even though she never lived in New York at that time. But only Hillary and their cabal could pull it off, and they got her elected. And then from there, she became Secretary of State under Obama. I mean, folks, she's got the pedigree. She should be a perfect presidential candidate. But I'm going to tell you, don't believe it. Don't believe it. I go to one visual that keeps flashing in my mind when I keep thinking of Hillary. And it was when the Benghazi thing happened and she was testifying before Congress. 4 people died, including one ambassador. And Hillary threw her shoulders up and looked at everybody because she was being queered and asked about it. And she said, they're dead. What difference does it make? And folks, if you'll go look at that cut, watch it over and over and over. And there's the coldest individual that you've ever seen that could make that statement in front of the whole world. But that's Hillary. Now, there's another case with Hillary that every time I see that, it brings it up, and that's the death of Vince Foster. For those of you that don't remember, Vince Foster when he allegedly, supposedly killed himself, committed suicide, he was the highest-ranking official to die in office since John F. Kennedy. Now, let me tell you the true story of that. Backed up at any time by Larry Patterson, Roger Perry, people on their security force when he was governor. Hillary and Vince Foster had a long-standing affair. They were lovers. When she wasn't with women, I'm sorry?
One of my friends walked in on the two of them in the parking structure of the Capitol building, the parking garage next door. He was working at the Capitol, just walks in, there's the two of them. Couldn't apparently wait to a hotel room. They were in the stairwell of the parking structure.
Yep. They in that day they could do whatever they wanted around Arkansas because nobody dared to come out about them. Nobody, except me. So anyway, she has this affair with Vince Foster. Long-standing. Then they go to the White House. He goes with them. And for whatever reason, she didn't need him anymore. She sort of ended that relationship, and Vince was pretty torn up about it. He dies. Killed himself ostensibly, whatever. And you can see her saying, what difference does it make? He's dead. As a matter of fact, the minute she finds out he's dead, do you think she goes running to his wife and to his family and consoles them, or do you think she bends over and sheds a tear? No, she goes running back to Arkansas to the Rose Law Firm offices to make sure they're getting all of the documents and papers that had anything to do with Vince Foster out of there, so nothing could be found out. Now, this is where I come in. You see, when Miss Foster died, I actually worked looking into that case. Now, I'm going to say it, Kevin, Greg, audience, hear me, because it's going to come out on the internet anyway saying I said something else. Let me say two things. Number one, you have never heard me, nor will you ever hear me say that Bill and Hillary Clinton had anybody killed, that they were responsible for anybody dying. Now, there were a lot of people that died around him. More people died around the Clinton administration when he was president than any other presidency, even during times of war. Ron Brown, Vince Foster, and so on. The list is quite lengthy, but I'm not saying they killed anybody or ordered anybody to kill. And I am not saying whether Vince Foster was murdered or whether he committed suicide. I don't know. But what I can prove in a court of law, I have the evidence to prove it. He didn't die on that berm in Fort Marcy Park. They moved his body. They moved him. Why? Why would this powerful couple, when a man like Vince Foster dies, why would they dare move the body? I will tell you. And I'm not going into all of it because I don't want everything that I'll be doing to expose Hillary when she runs for president. I'm not putting it all out so they can have plenty of time to warm up and stop me. Now, I ain't doing that, but I will tell you this. You see, where he died, he would have been under the jurisdiction of the D.C. police. When his body was moved to Fort Marcy Park, he was placed under the jurisdiction of the park police. And for as long as I guess there's been in Washington, D.C., the park police have been known to fix things for politicians. Whenever they get caught doing whatever it is they do, they get caught, park police cover up for them. So, folks, that's why the body was moved. I'll give you one little simple thing to help you understand that that body was moved. When the official autopsy, which I have a copy of, was made, Vince Foster had not one microscopic speck of dust or dirt on his shoes or on his pants. Now, folks, he walked 200 yards, if you believe the story of walking out to that berm and shooting himself. He walked 200 yards on a July, on a dusty trail, 200 yards to get to the berm, and yet he didn't have one microscopic speck of dust on his clothing. How did he do that? Fly? Now, one thing that Hillary is not going to get by with, She got by with all of it. I mean, everything, red bone, that's all passed, nothing you can do about it. The pharmaceutical stuff, that's passed, they got by with it. Benghazi, believe it or not, that's passed. They're going to get by with it because Congress isn't going to be able to do anything to her. They're not. But I will tell you this. Moving the body of Vince Foster is going to be problematic for them. It is. And for those of you that will follow me, and I'm not saying follow me in the sense of get behind me like I'm leading some parade. I'm not Al Sharpton. Matter of fact, I'm not leading y'all anywhere. I'm not. It's your country. It's as much your country as it is mine. But I'll tell you what I will do. I will say true, and I will tell the truth. And if you will listen to this program, if you'll listen to this network, if you'll help me get on other programs and other networks, everywhere I go, we will start spreading the word to this new group of people, the people that are 50, maybe 40, maybe 30, maybe 20, that age group. They weren't there during the Clinton regime. They don't know what all we went through. They don't know the truth about Clinton's world. When she announces, I will tell it. And I'll do everything in my power to stop her. And when I say follow me, I mean just tell people where to go to hear me. Tell them to come here. Tell them to listen to this series that's on, I guess, YouTube or wherever it's going to be, archived, whatever. Tell them to go. Start getting educated on this stuff about me. Call me names. Let them say what they will. Look at all the bad stuff about me. Look at it all. But look at the things I said and how they came to pass. One of us is lying. Me or the Clintons. And it's funny, out of the 38 major scandals, I'm talking about the little ones, and all the hearings, congressional hearings I caused, all that stuff, it's amazing that the stuff I said all came out to be true and the stuff they said didn't. So, it's coming. The battle's on, and it's going to be on if Hillary runs. Now, I do want to say one thing, one caveat. I don't think much at all of the Republican Party. I am not a Democrat, nor am I a Republican. I consider myself an American. And I believe the Republican Party, after what they did this last election cycle, is just about as vile and evil as anything the Clintons have done. You see, Karl Rove, Steve LaCharette, who was a former Ohio United States congressman, they got together. They raised millions and millions of dollars thanks to the chambers of commerce. They raised all these millions to go out and stop Tea Party candidates from winning. So starting tomorrow, when the Republicans take control of the Senate and get even more people in the House, let me tell you what we got. In my world, they're traitors. They're treasonous. They're not going to go in and do the will of the people. They're going to be there just to keep doing what they've been doing. They want it the way they've always had it. And Karl Rove and John McCain and Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, all those guys, they made sure that we got the same kind of people in there this time that'll go along with what they want done to keep it status quo. And folks, just listen to me when I say this. I don't think there's a prison in this country, not one prison, that has a greater percentage or number of degenerates than we have in Washington, D.C. right now. It is evil. If there are people going over there that are good, Tea Party candidates, support them. Help them stay true. Help them stay true to the faith. Don't let them turn like so many do. But Washington, D.C. is evil. Washington, D.C. is all lies. It's made up of child molesters, drug addicts, drunks. And you know what? They pass laws that say they can be any way they want to. We, the people, got to do and obey the laws. They don't. We've got to bring it back to the Constitution. We got to. But that's another battle.
Larry, we're up against a hard break here. It's
all right.
That time. Greg Martin with Kevin, the Voice of Reason, and Larry Nichols on the home of Larry Nichols on Leading Edge Radio Network. We'll be back right after this. And we're back with Kevin, the Voice of Reason. I'm Greg Martin, and we are with Larry Nichols. Larry, why don't you just pick up right where you left off?
Well, I will. And, folks, once again, I want to thank Greg and Kevin for allowing me this time to go through, this series of programs or whatever, these different vignettes. One of the questions asked me during the break was, what about, specifically one scandal for Hillary fundraising when she was running for the Senate? Folks, all that will come. The purpose of this show today, the purpose for all of this that you're hearing in a row, is so that you can listen and learn about me, learn about my background with the Clintons. That's all that's important. How do I connect to the Clintons? How could I possibly know what I know and what I'm fixing to start telling? How? We go back a long way, the Clintons and I. And that includes Hillary. And when she announces she's running for president, all hell's going to break loose. But between now and when she announces, please, all of y'all, come to this site. Use this site. Maybe there's one of the segments you like better than another or whatever. Invite your friends. Tell people, come to this site. Learn about this guy, Larry Nichols. There's going to be a reason when we start talking about the specifics about Hillary. There's going to be a reason they're going to want to know, well, how could he know that? How could he possibly know when nobody else is talking about it in the media? Because they're not going to talk about it. We'll talk about it here. Please, it's your country. It's as much your country as it is mine. This is your struggle, not just mine. And folks, I assure you, as much as I've tried to tell you today, it's hard. It's hard to condense, good heavens, 20 years, 8 of which he was president. It's hard to condense that into any amount of time. But Lord knows I remember. I remember every day of it. And I know Hillary Rodham Clinton. And when she runs, I assure you, the Republican hierarchy, McCain, McConnell, Boehner, and the boys, they're going to do their dead level best to make sure that the person they elect to run as the candidate for the Republican Party won't stand a snowball's chance of beating Hillary. They will make sure she is the next president unless we stop her. So please, pay attention. And I know the Internet's confusing. The Internet, you can go and you can find, if you believe one way, you'll find people that write stories about the way you believe. And then you won't believe stories other people write because they believe another way. Truth is truth, guys. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not liberal. It's not conservative. The truth is the truth, and it will out in the end. But sometimes, like I had to do, you got to wait years before it does out. So I beg you, start paying attention. Listen to this network, not just for me, but Kevin and Greg have gone to great trouble to create a really good network, and it's going to be worth your time to put it and log it in so that you can click and go to it. I don't know what you call it. I don't know anything about computers, but you're going to go to it. Now, I will say this, and I have to ask. I have no money. I have nothing. It wouldn't hurt if any of you want to help. I have to fund up. I have no money. Zero, zip, none, negative to fight this fight. So if you can help, please help. Send what you can so we can get it started with enough money to buy materials that we've got to have, to pay phone bills, do everything we got to do. Please. Now, if you want to help me, I don't know nothing about PayPal. I'm not going to use PayPal. So you can send, if you want to send a check, you can send it to number 58, Kensington Drive, Conway, Arkansas, 72034. That's Larry Nichols, Nichols, number 58, Kensington, Kensington, Drive, Conway, Arkansas 72034. Now, if you're going to send something, will you please go to my Facebook and notify us there, or you can send me a text to my phone. And by the way, if you want to talk to me, you can call me. I'm not a celebrity. I'm just like you. I'm a regular guy. My phone number is 440-897-0611. That's 440-897-0611. Please help. Please get involved. If you can't send anything to help, that's fine. I couldn't send nothing to help nobody either. But at least you can send people to the website. At least you can start showing people so that we're building an army, because it will take an army to stop these people. So you got my phone number. You got my address. And if you don't want to send it in the mail, you can send it Western Union. Go to my Facebook account, and it'll show you there how you can do it. But Kevin, Greg, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And let's hope that your network grows with the programs you've got scheduled and the programs that I know you're scheduling. You're going to be the most popular place on the internet, and I guess that's good.
Well, I'll see what we can do about getting a PayPal set up for you, or a GoFundMe or something like that, and get some of those high-tech internet vehicles set up for you. But we'll explore that in the next couple of days.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you again, Kevin, Greg, and all of you listening. Spread the word. Hell's coming to Washington, and I'm going to bring it.
And so true, Larry. We appreciate that. It might be appropriate, and it might not be appropriate to say that there is video coming, so people will not be simply relegated to having to listen to Leading Edge Radio Network to hear Larry, but you will get the opportunity to see Larry. I can't really release a lot of other details, but if you like the Clinton Chronicles and the other things that Larry did in the past, you are absolutely going to love what will be done in video, and you will be able to get that exclusively through leadingedgeradio.com and Larry Nichols. So, Larry, thank you very much for being on the program. God bless you. We are thrilled that you've found a new home. And by the way, for those of you who don't know this, Larry's not a guy who's moved around a lot. That's the same address Larry had many, many years ago when I talked to him. So he's not running for his life or living in fear or anything like that. Larry is an average guy, but he had a very nice military career, which he's asked me not to talk about. But I will say thank you, Larry, for serving your country then. Thank you for serving your country now in this respect as well.
Well, thank you. And by the way, I don't do it, and I'm supposed to do it. If they want to email me something, it is nicholslive@aol.com. Sorry about that. I forgot that. nicholslive@aol.com. And I don't know the difference between twitting and emailing and facing, but anyway, whatever it is, you got it.
Right.
You're doing the important stuff.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I missed that.
I said, thanks a lot for being with us today.
You bet. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much,
gentlemen.
gentlemen.
To a long venture together as we go on the journey to trying to save our country.
You got it. I'll be there.
Thank you, audience, for tuning in today, and check back with Leading Edge Radio Network often. Larry's program will be running on Mondays at 6 p.m. on the Leading Edge Radio Network. That's 6 p.m. Central Time. And as we get further into the political season, we will see that showtime expand, and we will also most likely see the number of days expand as well. We won't just run Larry once a week, but we'll start out with a once-a-week program. So between YouTube and LeadingEdgeRadioNetwork.com, we've got you covered. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We're back with Larry Nichols on the Leading Edge Radio Network. I'm joined by Kevin, the voice of reason. So, Larry, tell us something good, as you always do.
Well, there's one little story that I think we ought to talk about. Any of you that remember the TV show Night Court?
Yes.
There was a lady actress on there named Marcy Post or Marky Post, whatever, a blonde, good-looking lady. Well, I get this information from two former Secret Service guys. They call me. They said, man, this happened, and they started telling me about it. What had happened, these two Secret Service guys were outside the door of the president's quarters, living quarters, and the rule is they're not to go in there. That's private space for any and all presidents and first ladies and their families. They're just to stay outside. Well, on this day, they kept hearing screaming, and they were standing at the door. They didn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, they heard stuff breaking and screaming and shouting. Well, they barge in, thinking that that's what they should do. Much to their surprise, they get inside. And what they found was Hillary and this Marcy Post in the bed together, and Bill had come in and pulled up a chair and wanted to watch them. And Hillary was throwing ashtrays or lamps and everything at him, trying to make him get out. So that's Hillary. I thought you'd enjoy that little story just as a parting gift.
There's probably not a protocol for that in the Secret Service handbook.
Well, they were sure jammed up. They didn't know what to do. And so, as we go on this journey, guys, believe me, there are a million of those tales. Some not as funny as that, but there are a million tales, and none the least.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks a lot. And I'll probably get jokes at my other job here in just a second.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. This is a 2-minute vignette from Larry Nichols with Greg Martin and Kevin, the voice of reason.
All righty.